Could you just tell us when you're ready? Oh, no, thank you for that. Okay, it is now 7:45. I'm calling the public portion of the business meeting back into order. We've completed the executive session. There is no action to report. And so now we will start our public session with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I was gonna call on Jack Frankie, but I've lost him. I don't, Dr. Gianni, I see you're muted.
Here he comes.
Oh, here he comes.
He bounced out.
Okay. Jack, if you're back, I was gonna ask you to lead us in the pledge.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And the usual emergency evacuation notice to anybody who's on campus. Please make sure you know where the emergency exits are so you can get out safely if you have to. And no smoking anywhere on campus. We're in a completely smoke-free school district. So next we go to section C on the agenda, board consent agenda. And I think we have items C1, items C1 through C. These numbers don't look quite right, I'm sorry. 5.
C1 through C5?
I see through C6.
Well, C6 is consent. That's all of them.
Right, but down below it references items C1 through C7. So that's what threw me. So what we're doing is C1 through C5. Is there a motion to approve items C1 through C5? Ms. Ancona. Then we have Mr. Parker second. All in favor?
I have a question.
A question or discussion?
Yes, I have C1 through C8.
Oh, and I
have
had through C7 and then I looked at it and it's through C5.
so I'm gonna refresh.
Yeah, why don't we all refresh? Because I have C5.
It had to do with the minutes. There were 2 minutes that weren't attached, and I had notified the
Okay.
superintendent, and I asked if they weren't ready because of the election, that they'd be tabled to the next meeting. So I see they were pulled off the agenda.
I got you.
That's
Okay,
what it
but
was.
I think they're added back, right?
Well,
No,
I did see the minutes.
refresh, I think.
Okay,
so the minutes are added back, so it's,
I'm
No.
sorry, no, the minutes are not added back. It's only the minutes from last night's vote.
from
that are
last
on
night.
there.
last night's vote.
Correct.
Okay. So
But I
we
do have-
don't, so there's nothing, I don't see anything on the agenda that said we would be approving minutes from prior meetings. I only see the minutes for last night, for last night's. That, I see some nods that that's what it is.
That's what it is now.
Yes.
Okay, and that would be items C1 through C5. We had the motion and the second. So all in,
I just have one,
another question?
I just have one comment.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to item C5, the New York State, the NYSBA Live Virtual Fiscal Oversight Fundamentals, that's for me. I just wanted to make note that that is at no cost to the district because it does come with the Mastery Award that was given last month because of the other trainings that I have attended. So I just wanted to make that notation. that
Oh,
it's-
you're stealing my thunder. I was gonna say something to
Oh, okay,
commit
all right.
you
I
were
apologize. I
doing
apologize.
that after we took the vote.
Okay, never mind. All right, you give me the heads up then. I'm sorry.
Okay, Ms. Ancona, I saw your hand. You have questions or discussion here? None? Okay, now, all in favor of approving these items? It's unanimously approved. And now I only will do ditto what Ms. Felice did announce, and I just wanted to comment that there are a lot of good training programs available through the New York State School Boards Association. And you do accumulate points and you get free things like more training. And I want to thank you for contributing your free certificate and also for going to this fiscal oversight fundamental training program that will come up in July. I think that that's part of the program that's available to new board members. But it's, I think it's a good idea for us to get, it's almost like a booster shot to go do it every once in a while, because you'll always learn something and you can bring it back to us. So thank you for that. Next is over to Dr. Gianni.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to the community for supporting our proposed school budget last night. As you know, our budget passed with 1,300 of 2017 voters approving the spending plan. Congratulations are also in order for trustees Pacini and Trent for being reelected to their current seats. Also, I would like to clarify that actual percentage increase that was approved last night was a 1.25% tax levy increase. Newsday reported a budget to budget increase, which is 5.15%. And the percentages are different because 5.15 includes the increases from all of our revenue sources, including the allowable tax levy increase. So as you recall, we got funds from the federal government, we got a little additional state aid, and that increased our total budget to budget by 5.15, but only 1.25 to the taxpayers. On another topic, on Tuesday, and voting as well, on Tuesday, May 25th, Suffolk County is holding a special election for Suffolk County Legislative District number 3. We were notified that the Board of Elections has designated Brookhaven Elementary School and Bellport Middle School for conducting this special election. This pandemic continues to bring new challenges to our schools. With this, voters will be in the building while school is in session. Typically, on an election day, schools are closed or we are able to isolate voters and the voting area from teaching and learning. Unfortunately, at Brookhaven, it is not possible to isolate the voting area completely from teaching and learning areas. So as a result, and due to the pandemic and out of an abundance of caution, on Tuesday, May 25th, Brookhaven students, faculty, and staff will transition to remote teaching and learning with students learning from home. A letter did go out to Brookhaven families yesterday, and I think again today. Dr. Raymond sent a letter out to her families as well. The middle school is a little different. We are able to isolate the voting area, much like we did for our own school budget and election. So in-person learning will not be interrupted at the middle school for this county's special election. And I do apologize for any inconvenience this may cause to our Brookhaven families. And we thank you all for your cooperation. And I see Mr. Pacini has his hand up. Mr. Pacini?
Thank you. This is of great frustration to me. I know various school board lobbying groups and associations for years have petitioned the State Board of Elections to remove schools as polling places. And I think it's incredibly unfair that some of our students and families' lives are disrupted for one day when they've already missed so much. and with so many people, the additional daycare and everything else. If the board agrees, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, and I know it's kind of late and there's little we can do, but I do think we should make a public comment or a letter or something to the Board of Elections. This is incredibly unfair to our families and our students.
Mr. Trent?
Yeah, I would actually agree with that. Do the county ask us for permission, or do they just say, we're gonna be in your building for election day?
No, they designate, actually, I'll let Mr. Sheehan speak to that. Council?
So the county designates the location for the elections. School districts are obligated to comply with the county designation. The county has specific provisions that they require for elections in terms of access and accessibility for those with disabilities. They have the right to determine what constitutes proper access and what is accessible in terms of an election site. And that's my understanding in this case, that they have designated this site and determined the rooms that will be used for the election.
Well, I would be in support of a letter to the county.
You think, Kona?
Isn't this the last election our schools are going to be used for? Didn't they change it already, starting for November?
No, so our work with the Board of Elections last school year got them to remove Kramer and Frank P. Long and move those to the middle school. Because of the way the zones are, they couldn't eliminate Brookhaven. I had suggested the firehouse, but that did not go over well. Middle school doesn't present a problem for us because we're able to isolate that area, but the other schools were a problem. We were also concerned that, Critz is typically an election site as well, but they did not need it because it didn't fall into that district. So that could have also been under the same problem that we have today, or yet next Tuesday.
Okay. I'm in support of a letter too, if that will make any difference. I just thought it was changing as of this year coming.
Can I just clarify? It seems to me that this is a impediment to our families, our children, our teaching staff for one day this year, and it's the pandemic related cause. And that would not, assuming that the pandemic is not going to create these problems for us going into the next year, it wouldn't happen again, because having election day, as Dr. Gianni said, they've been able to have people come in and not interfere with the educational program that's going on. It's really just the pandemic issues that can't be addressed this year. And that's why Brookhaven is going all remote. So it doesn't make us feel any better about next Tuesday, but I don't see that that's going to be recurring. Or is there some other information there that you know about that I'm not picking up? Mr. Piccini.
I think it's, typically in November, schools closed. And that's something that a lot of school boards across the state have been lobbying against, because, it is tough. It is tough on families to have another day off. It is, really no reason to have, a day off in the middle of November if there's, an appropriate other location. And I think, there's a couple things. I think a letter makes sense, and it shows our families that we understand what how difficult it is and how inconvenient it is for them to have to deal with this. But I think it's about time we get our voices heard on this issue, because, you can go from many issues, take the pandemic out of it, from security issues. The general public stepping on a school grounds is never really a great idea, unless it's parents coming to see their kids. There's a lot of different reasons. And, it may not, but sometimes we use gymnasiums, right? So there's no gym class that day. It's a disruption. regardless of the pandemic. And I think, you know, I just think our voices should be heard on this. And I think the more school districts that do things like this throughout the year, because there are fire departments, there are libraries, there are public places that are available for this. I mean, Brookhaven Fire Department is right down the road, and so is I know the library is small, but it's right down the road from the school. Do it there. I can assure you that there's probably a rare occurrence of a fire call during the election day. It's not like, you know, and no disrespect to the fire departments, but it's not like those fire departments are running out the door with the lights on every few minutes. So I don't see any reason why, for a stretch of a day, that fire departments and libraries can't be used for polling places and to not disrupt our students' education. That's all. And it is a disruption, in my opinion.
You
No matter what.
clarified that in my mind a little bit, because I'm now seeing this as two different issues. I thought what you were talking about is the, you know, to indicate how we're upset about the position they put us in at Brookhaven Elementary School for next Tuesday. But
Well, I
what
think
you're really, but now what you're saying is you're looking at it in general to see if there are other polling places where the voting public has access and they feel free to go there. They're not in, you know, it's not limiting to them. And it would also mean but we may not even be able to put that particular day back on a school calendar, because if it's a, you know, federal holiday, for example, we wouldn't be in session then anyway. So I'm just wondering, like, you know, do you
I
want to
think
take a stab at writing a draft of
I,
something?
I certainly can, but I do think it's both. I think it's a disruption to the school day every year. It's a little bit more of a disruption this year. I think it's difficult. So I think it's twofold. I really do. I just think it's high time that schools are not polling places. And you know, I guess the narrative always seems to be about making voting accessible to everybody. But like I said, it's not like we're upstate and the next public property is, you know, 40 miles down the road. There's plenty of spots here. So I think it's both. I think it's both. So if you want me to take a stab at it, you know, I will, but I think it's a big problem every year.
I
And
see that, but I would like you to also give some thought to how it fits in with our school calendar, because if it's a day that's going to be closed anyway,
well,
that
there's
might not go into the mix.
but it's, I mean, you know,
That
the
would
point
be the
is, I guess
November.
my point is schools shouldn't be closed on election. And I think I can make the argument that it makes parents more available to vote. But I also, you know, I can extend it to even a little further that goes beyond Board of Elections. And now, I mean, every time there's the slightest bit of disruption, it's going to be very easy for somebody to say, all right, it's a remote day. And that puts pressure on parents.
Okay, let's hold that to, that's a different thing. But with regard to election day, I think there's a difference between the first Tuesday in November election days and these other ones. And we got hit with the special election day next week. So if you can take a stab at drafting a statement that we could send to the County Board of Elections indicating how disruptive this is to our educational system, and
Sure, I'll take care of it.
seeking some alternatives.
Got it.
Any, Ms. Felice?
Just quick, in the long term, sounds like a job for the legislative committee.
So maybe our legislative committee could tag team on this, you know, the
Agreed.
statement.
To that point, I think it's been mentioned, it's on the topic of probably most legislative committees in most districts. Nassau Suffolk School Board and NYSBA have lobbied for this, you know, as well. This is an opportunity to highlight that effort on behalf of the board on something that's coming up next week. That's all.
But since we do have the legislative committee, let's, you know, have 2 or 3 heads which can work on this and, you know, have a good draft to bring back to us.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Dr. Gianni, we're back to your report.
Thank you. Much has been talked about and discussed regarding the ever-changing guidance from the CDC, and in particular mask wearing. Throughout the pandemic, the district's reopening plan has been guided by our governing authority for public health law, which is New York State Department of Health and Suffolk County Department of Health, and of course, our Board of Education. At this time, New York State and Suffolk County has not changed its mask policy as it relates to schools. So masks are required on school property. While desk barriers are no longer required by the state or the county, we do plan to leave them in place for the rest of the school year, and then make that decision later on during the summer months as we look to reopen for September. And I have a report on some end of year activities for the board and let you know where we are in general with some activities, not specifically, but grades K-5 field days will permit 2 spectators per student, with students participating in their classroom cohort. Due to classroom cohorting protocols, though, remote learners will be provided activities for home. Moving up, did I see a hand? Mr. Pacini?
Is there any way we can include the remote kids in these activities? I mean, is there really a regulation or stipulation for this? I mean, if parents are willing, because these are outdoor events, and because we took so much time at the beginning of the year to have Google Meets with the remote kids and their roster, the class that they're on the roster for, to make them a part of the class, it seems just a little disconnected from that message to exclude them from in person here.
Listen, I understand, but they are not part of the cohort, and that's what we are doing. I couldn't even bring them in and combine them because it would be mixed grade levels into their own cohort. Ms. Ancona?
I'm sorry, that really just doesn't make sense that they can't be included because we let the remote high school kids come to sports. So there has to be a way that we let them. If their parents are willing to put them in this and know that they're going to be quarantined, God forbid there's exposure, and it's an outdoor activity, I don't see why. If we're letting high school kids do it, it should be the same for elementary.
Well, high school are not cohorted, so it is different. And remember, high schools make a decision to participate in athletics. You do, you know, the kids that are in school in person now they would also need to be in agreement with someone coming into the cohort now, right? You can't simply get permission for the remote kids to come in.
So why not just make the remote kids a cohort?
Because the remote kids, it's by class and grade, right? So the activities are by class and grade. You have few kids at each grade level. You'd have to combine all grade levels to do that.
Not muted. But clarification, I mean, is there a regulation that's preventing us, or is this our own rule? And I mean, and is the decision being made out of fear for what the cohort that is in school is how they're going to react? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, the decision's being made based on a reopening plan. We cohort elementary students. That's what we do. This is breaking those cohort protocols.
But I guess my point is that's at the board's discretion, is it not? I mean, is the recommend? I guess I'm trying to understand. Is this a logistical thing? Do we really have, you know, a tremendous fear that there is going to be a spike in COVID cases because we let kids come and play outside at field day? I mean, so I'm trying to understand where it's coming from, because what we know is that, you know, it's very rare for there to be any case of COVID contracted outside through casual contact, right? And of course, we are not even eliminating masks, so I think it's even less likely to happen at field day. So I guess I'm trying to understand, there's not a regulation that we're violating, it's strictly based on a reopening plan, which is at the discretion of the board.
Well, the reopening plan is policy, it's the board's, and that's what you would be breaking.
And I guess the following question, we wouldn't be breaking it if we amended it, right? And I guess, and I'm sorry, I know there's a couple people want to speak, I guess to just follow up though, is it the recommendation of the administration that this creates some tremendous logistical obstacle or resistance from parents of kids who are not on remote?
No, I don't want to say it's a tremendous logistical obstacle. It's difficult. It would cause a change in planning. It would cause a change in contact tracing, right? In the event something did happen. You know, quite frankly, I don't know if teachers and parents are comfortable with someone not currently in the classroom coming into the classroom. I don't have those answers.
But I'm sorry, I don't want to take up time. Somebody else can speak, but I'm just quickly, we're allowing parents to come. So, but I'll let somebody else talk. I'm sorry.
Parents will be separated from the kids. So that's not going to be the issue. If kids are participating, they're obviously not going to be separated. Ms. Ancona?
So I'm trying to think of a way to say this without coming off like snide, but so for lack of better words, I'm just going to say it the way, but this is not to be intended to be rude. When it comes to stuff like this, people in the community think it's a board policy. And a lot of times we'll blame the board for things that administration is making some planning, such as these end of the year events that we have no idea about until it's mentioned here. And sometimes it seems that depending on how certain people feel about it, it's either a board decision or an administration's decision. It doesn't seem like it's that way across the board for certain things. If it's a board policy and we're going to stand behind that, and you have board members here that are willing to change the policy for an end of the year event, being that our COVID numbers are much lower than they were when we started these plans, I don't see the frustration. If one of those kids called right now and said, I want to go back into the classroom, we would let them. So if it's up to the parents and the parents are willing to do this, I really feel like there's a way to think outside the box and cohort these remote kids somehow, and maybe get in a gist of how the teachers are feeling if one kid is thrown into the mix. But I don't foresee this being a super spreader event. By there may be 10 out of all these kids that we're talking about now, may not be all of them that want to come back, but I think that we should do something. Or let's take it one step further and think outside the box and let them have their own field day here, on another day, just so they don't feel excluded. But there has to be something we're not thinking of. And like I said, I'm not trying to be rude. I get that there's stuff in motion and we made a policy, but we can always change the policy as a board. And those end of the year events, I do want to make it clear to parents, we don't know anything about these and we don't have any idea about them. And I'm glad that parents are emailing us and letting us know that, but that's not the board's decision, that's administration's.
But if we can amend our reopening plan to allow these students to attend, I think we should definitely do that. Absolutely.
Well, I don't want the board to think that amending the plan will make it so they can attend. That's something that administration will have to look at.
So when do you think that you would have a decision to see if this is possible or not?
Well, I mean, the only thing that I can see that's possible right now is creating a separate cohort, which wouldn't require an amendment to the plan, or a separate day, as Ms. Ancona had suggested. But I don't know. I don't want to speak on behalf of the principals or the teachers. That's something I would have to go back and speak with those planning it with.
Sorry. Yeah, I have to go back to what I really said before. I mean, to me, creating a separate cohort or giving the remote only kids their own field day by themselves, it goes against the spirit of what I was thinking. And I think these students, if they're willing, just like I said before, we went to great lengths to include these remote students in Google Meets in the morning with their class so that they were on that roster and they can feel a part of that class. I really am having a hard time understanding what the major risk is when a majority of these kids are playing sports against kids from other towns in high school, and I know you talked about how different it is from high school athletics, they're still competing against kids from neighboring towns. I don't really see what the difference is here, unless there is a groundswell of in-person parents who have an issue with students that are remote coming in. But I would think that would be the safest group of people to be around because they are remote and they're around less people. So that's my 2 cents. Maybe it's 10 cents by now.
The way I see it is that when we put the reopening plan into place upon recommendation of the administration and then have modified it, you know, from time to time, and which meant expanding it and allowing additional activities. I think if we look at it now, there seems to be some inconsistencies between what we permit on some levels and in connection with certain activities compared to how the reopening plan would be applying to, say, a field day event, for example. And I just wonder, is there any way that the entire reopening plan could be looked at to see if administration thinks we still need to have those restrictions? We'll still have masks in place. We'll still expect there to be social distancing as much as possible in the, you know, outdoors and in the hallways.
Sure.
Is
And
this
let me,
something you could look into?
yeah, we could look into it, but I want to speak to the comment about inconsistencies. So our plan is guided by guidance, right? I see and hear the argument with regard to interscholastic athletics and, you know, physical education, but that's the guidance. It's not something we're creating and making up. The other issue with the remote learners is the remote learners are spread across the district right now, right? So there's no real cohort in one building. It's not as simple as putting them back in. And to Mr. Pacini's comment earlier, I don't know how families of in-person learners would feel about putting them back in either. So, I mean, there would need to be some work to take a look at what we may be able to do. And I don't want to come across as having all the answers right now with regard to what to do to get them into the activity.
I did not mean by my words to indicate that the administration or the board had created an inconsistency here. It's been the problem that we've had all along with trying to deal with the guidances at every step. And then the guidances get changed a little bit in one piece, which can affect what we're doing. But if there's a way to, I guess my favorite phrase is like least restrictive alternative. What's the least restrictive alternative right now with regard to end of the year activities?
Again, that it's something that we'd have to look at. If the board is not happy with the remote learners on remote field day, then I would take it back to administration to take another look at it. Ms.
I
Felice?
see Ms. Felice.
Yeah, I just want to add quickly that I find myself in agreement with the comments that have already been made. We've amended the reopening plan a number of times for a number of reasons, and I think it would be wise for administration to go back and take a hard look.
Mr. Pacini?
I think for my third final point, we don't ask parents or seek their input and I think Gina made this point, when a student is on remote and we welcome them back into in-person. So I'm really failing and if the kids, I mean, listen, if the remote parents are fine with them being their own cohort, maybe I'm advocating for something they don't want. I don't really know. I know there's not a lot of them, maybe we can ask them. But from my understanding, elementary schools, there's only a couple of remote students per class anyway from the original roster they were on. So if a parent said tomorrow, I want my kid to be in person, we wouldn't really be worried about the reaction of the rest of the classroom's families for in person. And again, it just seems like such a minimal risk with, you know, what we now know about COVID transmission outdoors. And the fact, like I said before, these kids have been remote. So I can make the argument that they've been less exposed to the kids who are already in school. So if anybody's at risk, it's the remote kids and not the other way around. So that and to the point, I don't see why we can't amend this.
All right, so if the administration can take a look at the field day and do you want to expand it to all the end of the year activities or just leave it at field day?
I think
I think every end of the year activity is different in its own sense.
but
I think, I'm sorry.
I would just like to have, everyone have the opportunity to be included. If they want to participate in an end of the year activity, we should do our best to make sure that we can accommodate them.
And for me, the picnics and everything else, I don't see a difference in field day and a picnic. I really don't. Let them be involved in everything. These kids have been robbed of so much of the milestones of their educational time in grade levels and things like that. And I really think we've got to figure this out. And I think we can.
Okay, moving on to moving ups. Pre-K will host an outdoor in-person event with spectators, 2 spectators per student, with scheduled times to keep numbers down. 3rd and 5th grade will be doing in-class virtual celebrations and a car parade as we did last year. 8th grade is exploring an outdoor event in person with spectators. And we have some award ceremonies. National Junior Honor Society is currently scheduled for virtual, but is exploring indoors, an indoor in-person event with spectators, as we are with the Tri-M induction ceremony. And at the high school, the Senior Awards is going to be indoors, in person with spectators, 2 tickets per student with scheduled times. We are going, in terms of concerts, we're holding a couple of music festivals. One at the middle school football field on the 5th and one on the high school football field on the 12th. And it's going to be more like a music festival rather than a organized concert as we may have done in the past. Prom graduation, no change in prom right now. They're going to be indoor at Sunset Harbor. However, we're going to be reviewing ticket sales to determine if we are able to make any changes there. And no change in graduation, which is going to be an outdoor drive-in type with the presentation of diplomas, which will be different from last school year. And those are the end of year activities that I have to report to you this evening. Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Moving on, we have.
Sorry, quick question about graduation. Sorry. Since guidance seems to be changing almost weekly, and if in some way that the state and county decide to follow the CDC guidance that was just released and apply that to schools, are we going to be able to pivot if necessary? Is specifically in masks, but possibly not be in cars and be spaced out in chairs. I'm just wondering if we passed a breaking point to make any changes, if guidance changes to improve upon what I think is already a great plan. Don't get me wrong, but I think some people are still looking to get back to normal where they could sit outside on a lawn chair versus sitting in a car.
Yeah, in terms of graduation, while I don't have the details, I don't want to speak for high school administration. I think we're at the point of no return, even if the change comes forward late. It's a lot of planning to do an event such as graduation, whether it's indoors or outdoors. Actually, outdoors is pretty difficult to do. In terms of the prom, that depends on the venue, and how much our numbers would get increased to. That might be a little bit easier to pivot on, depending upon what that guidance might change to.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And moving on, we have 384 respondents to our student vaccination survey. So far, the survey suggests 40% of the respondents are interested in having their children vaccinated, while 60% are not. Those who have yet to complete the survey have until tomorrow when it closes. So if you have not completed the survey, please dig up that link I sent you and complete the survey. If you need it, please feel free to call the clerk or my office and we'll send you the link again. Congratulations are in order to Bellport Middle School Social Studies teacher, Megan Biven. Ms. Biven was recently named Outstanding Middle School Social Studies Teacher of the Year by the Long Island Council of Social Studies. Congratulations, Megan. We're proud of you and the work that you do with our students and their families. And then I have my COVID report numbers for the community and the board. For the community's information, as of yesterday, we have 105 faculty or staff and 315 students. Total COVID-19 positive cases reported to district this school year, not currently, this school year. And in terms of quarantine, also as of yesterday, we currently have 1 faculty or staff member and 16 students in quarantine as a result of close contact. And lastly, the district is aware of a recent community incident involving racism. I want to ensure the community that as a district, we condemn racism, bigotry, and any type of hate, none of which are tolerated or accepted in our schools. As a district, we are committed to providing our students with a safe educational space that is nurturing, equitable, and free from any discrimination. And that is all I have in terms of announcement. President Hayes, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Gianni. And I'm going to just tag on to what you just said on behalf of the district and to say that the board also continues to stand behind its pledge that was made earlier in the year to be an instrument of lasting change against systemic racism, intolerance, and social injustice. The recent incident of racial hatred that arose during the course of the campaign for board seats this year has been compounded also by another incident of vandalism at the playground in the village of Bellport. And it's a use of the same vile epithet that was on the flyer that was publicized. These incidents of hate speech have no place in our schools, and they have no place in our community either, because it spills over into the schools and affects the hearts and minds of the students. I had drafted a statement for the board that I had submitted to board members, but since the board can only act in public to get an official statement from the board, I was hoping to be able to add that at the end of our it'll be the items for discussion and action. If we could add an item number 7 to discuss the possibility of a board statement. I also wanted to say that it's sort of coincidental, but today was also a webinar put on by the New York State School Boards Association. And I know Ms. Felice attended it, I attended it. I'm not sure about other attendees, but the topic was, it had to do with civility and civics. And one of the quotes there is, or the topic being, your school district's role in defeating uncivil discourse in our society. And it had a lot of very interesting information in it about the history of public education, why it was established, and the history of the importance of social studies curriculums, because there was an early understanding that one of the main roles was to teach students how to do research and how to make fact-based opinions and how to be college, career, and civic readiness to take up their role in civil society once they graduate. There'll be a lot of information that's going to be forthcoming, and I'll be able to share that with the board once we get it. So that kind of feeds in also on the trustee and advisory committee report section for me. The only other thing I would have to say is that I did attend a committee meeting for equity and inclusion, where work is being done on issuing or drafting definitions to go along with the policy that's going to be presented later on in the board meeting tonight. That's it. Who's the next trustee with a report? Mr. Trent.
Yes, I wanted to congratulate Ms. Bevan on her achievements. And I also wanted to thank the community for coming out and supporting, well, first for voting, and then for coming out and supporting our budget. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Ms. Ancona.
The website committee met, I don't even remember now, but maybe 2 weeks ago. And that was our last meeting for the school year. We're going to revisit the website, the new options in the fall to see how it fits in with our budget. But in the meantime, the schools and administrators are going to work on cleaning up the clutter that's on there now. They're going to continue with that and see what can come off. So that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Ms. Felice.
Thank you. Yes, just to follow up on what the president said about today's seminar, it was very timely for us to sit in on it today on the most beautiful day of the year. We spent our afternoon learning more about how we can be better representatives for our district and sharing that knowledge with all of you. And like Ms. Hayes said, there'll be more information they are sending us and we'll share with the board. But what was interesting to note about the social studies curriculum that was mentioned earlier is our high school capstone program that we have instituted only just, one short year ago, or maybe 2 short years ago. But that program is giving our students that research ability that they don't have, and what this particular seminar was encouraging. And they spoke about how these two programs can work hand in hand with one another. And many districts haven't looked at the capstone program because of cost and because they don't have the funding. So I'm grateful that we do have funding, and I was on the board back when we approved it. So we are doing wonderful things. The Teach and Learn Committee gave a wonderful update on the capstone program last week. We had some of the research projects that students formed were read to us at the last meeting, and it was they just blew us away with how well they did. And many of the teachers on the committee commented that their work was postgraduate level work, and we were very proud to hear what they had to say. So like the president said, there's many opportunities for these courses to take these courses, and they are well worth the investment. But if you can't, I am certainly more than happy to share with them what I've learned. Also, Strategic Planning Committee met about 2 weeks ago, and some of the action that has been taking place, the good action, the great action that has been taking place on the Equity and Inclusion Committee, and its mission is going to be read, is on the agenda for its first reading tonight. And for the community, don't underestimate what's being done here with regard to, just all kinds of injustice. It's being worked on, and certainly voices need to be heard. And if you feel your voice hasn't been heard, then by all means, reach out to us. Just a word about what took place and some of the unfortunate rhetoric that always occurs around election time, no matter what kind of election it is. I just want to say how proud I was of Mr. Trent and how he held his head high and acted with dignity throughout, no matter what was being said about him and what was being said about his family. That's the awful byproduct of when you put you out there for public involvement yourself to that kind of criticism that you don't deserve. And I'm proud of you for the work that you did. I'm proud of the community for coming out in the way it did. And even though there was someone who didn't prevail, the voices of those people who supported that person deserve to be heard, and the issues that they raised deserve to be listened to. And this board will do that. So in closing, I just want to ask Dr. Gianni to look into the sprinkler system at the JV girls softball games. Twice the sprinklers came on in the middle of the game, and social media is not happy about it. So if you could see why that happened and get it corrected, I think you'll make the parents and the students who serve on JV softball very happy. Thank you.
You're welcome. I am aware of the sprinklers. I learned about both of those events. And just to speak to Capstone, we're going to have a presentation for the board, that presentation TNL had for our next meeting.
Good. Mr. Parker?
Yes, hi. I, number one, just want to congratulate our returning candidates, Mr. Trent and Mr. Piccini. You guys had a hard battle. Welcome back. I also wanted just to take some time to think about some of the things that Ms. Felice said, which took some of what I would like to say out of my mouth. But I think when I look at this board, I think of all the work that we do. Most people will never understand the amount of time and energy that goes into being a board member, and especially with the school. And I just want to thank all of us and just congratulate you all on just working together. We struggle, we fight sometimes, but at the same time, in the end, we have our students at heart. And for all you parents who think sometimes that, well, maybe we don't, but we do, we really do. And thank you all for being a part of this great union that we have. Thank you.
Mr. Piccini?
Thank you. I've been thinking for a couple of days what I was going to say tonight and how to frame the way the election went and election season went. And, Ms. Felice said something in the last meeting that somebody made a comment about how difficult and how nasty the election had gotten. And that really surprised me because I really hadn't seen any of it. And then within a couple of days, boy, did I start seeing everything that was going on. And it really kind of struck me. And obviously the worst part of it all was the attack on Cameron, and what I think is an attack on his family as well. And nobody should be treated like that. And as we talked about, the behavior during this of many in our community, or some, I shouldn't say many, some in our community throughout this election. And there were a lot of attacks levied on a lot of people. And I got to be honest with you, if anybody was really attacking me more than they normally do, I didn't see it. I think it was really kind of pointed at Ms. Walker and Mr. Trent. And there was some discussions because I know, some people had made some comments that Ms. Walker was a racist. And obviously the unsolicited and just disgusting attack on Cameron and his family. And people started comparing them, well, one's worse than the other. And of course they are, but how far have we come as a community if we're really going to start comparing the degrees of hate that is circulated on social media? And that really bothered me more than anything. And then literally the day before the election, I saw a text from a community member who I don't know personally. And they had sent out a mass text to a couple hundred people. And it was, hey, support these two candidates and vote down the budget. And I was stunned, and I started making some calls, and there was a groundswell among some parents in our community. And there were school-age children's parents. It wasn't, people point to the people who don't have kids in school, the retired folks who they just want their taxes to go down. It wasn't that. It was, how could they be raising taxes during such difficult economic times and all these other things? And those are valid questions while the budget's being put together, not 2 days before the election. And what really bothered me more than anything was the rhetoric took over, and nobody, and I voiced my frustration on social media about Meet the Candidates Night. And it had nothing to do with PTA Council, for sure. I want to make sure everybody understands that. But it had to do with the questions that were asked, which was submitted by the community. And nothing on curriculum, nothing on the budget, nothing on state aid. And if we're ever going to talk about equity, start talking about the inequity in state aid and what that really does to a school district, because that's really where it starts. There was none of that. There was no debate on visions for our school, what we needed. I mean, out of the 12 or 13 questions we got at Meet the Candidates Night, I think 4 or 5 of them were about the landfill, and another 4 or 5 of them were about, racism or race relations. And those are worthy topics, but I don't think it should have taken up, 2/3 of the hour and 20 minutes that we had to discuss what our vision for the district was. And I don't know, or there have been times in the past couple of years that I've been guilty of some rhetoric. We all let our emotions get the best of us. I just hope after this, and now that it's over, we can just be better. I mean, do we really want to argue on social media? It's so toxic right now. Do we want to do this? And I've said this before at meetings. We act the way we tell our kids not to act on social media sometimes. And I mean, we as a community, I mean, the adults. So I hope the people in the community, and I don't know how many people are watching on YouTube tonight, I hope people get the message and we could just knock it off and talk about what's really important instead of specific agendas. Thank you.
Mr. Frankie.
Hello, can you hear me? All right, so I am very proud to announce that I got the opportunity to vote for the first time yesterday. It felt really good to serve my civil duty, and I'm extremely glad that the budget passed. I would like to congratulate Mr. Trent and Mr. Puccini on their re-election. The Bellport High School administration, along with the student council and the class of 2021, have been really hard planning a bunch of senior activities to end off the school year. First off, student council is planning senior field day. This will take place next Tuesday, May 25th, during periods 6 to 9, up on the turf field. Seniors are required to fill out a Google form that is posted on the class of 2021 Google Classroom, and students attending the event must be in school to participate or to watch from the sidelines. Next up is senior awards. As Dr. Gianni said, they will be in person with 2 guests per senior student, and more information will be sent out via the class of 2021 Google Classroom. After that, we have the senior prom, which will be held on Friday, June 11th from 7 to 10 p.m. at Sunset Harbor in Patchogue. The tickets are $75 and the payment must be made in cash. Seniors have until Friday to purchase prom tickets. Last but not least, we have senior graduation on June 25th. It will mirror what took place last year, but will give students opportunity to be presented with their diplomas on stage individually. Outside of all the senior activities, Bellport High School will be hosting the SAT exam on Saturday, June 5th. Administration is expecting roughly 200 kids to be taking the exam. Students wishing to sign up must log into their College Board account and check for availability. And finally, the Bellport High School Music and Arts Department is pleased to present Now Hear This, the virtual musical this year. The musical will be streamed online this Friday, May 21st at 7:30 p.m. and this Saturday, May 22nd at 7:30 p.m. Tickets can be bought online at showtixforyou.com. I can't wait to see the great work that Mrs. Hartman, Mr. Finnegan, Mrs. Gallagher, and all the cast of Now Hear This. that they put into producing the show. Once again, tickets can be bought online at Showtix for You and type in the keyword Bellport. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
I just want to
Sorry,
say,
Ms. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
now, Mr. Trent?
Mr. Ferengi, if you could vote, you could run. All right, so just wanna throw that out there, all right? If you can vote, you can run.
Ms. Hayes, 2 seconds. I'm sorry, I forgot something.
Yes, go ahead.
I did want to congratulate Dr. Gianni on another successful budget. I don't think you've ever had an unsuccessful budget. So thank you and your staff in the business office, Ms. Costa's effort in bringing the budget home.
And let me add to that, I want to thank Christine Flynn, our district clerk, for overseeing and all the operations involved in getting the election done yesterday, along with all of her assistants and staff who were there all day. It was a very long day for them, but thank you. So I see a show of hands for Ms. Flynn.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. So next, we're down to section E, public commentary. Ms. Flynn, do we have any letters that were submitted to be read?
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
So this is from Elise Klein. Good afternoon. This email is to ask why parents are not allowed to attend, support, watch, and encourage our children during the elementary field day events. My children attend Kramer Street and Frank P. Long, and every year they look forward to me coming to support them. Parents and spectators are allowed at middle school and high school outdoor sporting events, but elementary parents are not. This needs to change. The events are held outdoors. At Kramer Street, parents watch from the middle school bleachers as the event takes place on the track and field behind the fences. It is important for our children to be encouraged and supported as they show off their athletic skills and what they have learned and practiced this school year. It is time to make a change to the current rule and return to normalcy. Thank you, Elise Klein. And that's the only letter.
Okay, thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
now we're up to item F, and that's back, I think, Dr. Gianni.
Yes, thank you, President Hayes. Our first item for discussion this evening is a presentation of our plan for middle school science pathway. We presented at our last meeting, and at that time, the board asked if we could bring the item back for the board's consideration at this meeting. Ms. Doyle, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Accountability, along with Mr. Burke, our Director of STEM, will make the presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Doyle.
Thank you, Dr. Gianni. Good evening, members of the board. Good evening, South Country community. Thank you for permitting us to revisit this topic and for your thoughtful questions and comments. And we hope that we can answer everything for you this evening. So Mr. Burke is here. Dr. Gianni, would you allow Mr. Burke to share his screen?
Yes, he is allowed.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Burke, for putting this together and for your thoughts. And I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Doyle. And I want to also thank Dr. Gianni and the Board of Education for this opportunity to speak with you here this evening and share the information on our planning and proposal for our middle school science program. And I'm going to start sharing my screen now. All right, let me try to get that out of the way real quickly. Okay, so the graphic that you're seeing here is the representation of our current science pathway at the middle school. That consists of 6th grade earth, space science. And then at the 7th grade level, the students would take life science, or if they're being accelerated, they would take the physical science course as 7th graders. As 8th graders, the students who have been in life science would then take the physical science course. The students who have been in 7th grade physical science would take the 8th grade Regents Living Environment course. And certainly the 8th grade living environment course is the goal at the middle school level to get to that Regents level course. So that is our current pathway. There are a few things that happen within that pathway that are some unintended consequences. And you'll notice in the graphic that there is this course in yellow. And so that is a course that has been needed to be put in place because there are some situations where some students don't necessarily fall into the 3 different kinds of opportunities there. And so that yellow course there is a life science course for 8th grade students. Those students would be students who maybe did not do well in physical science in 7th grade, or perhaps they are students who get into the Regents Living Environment and maybe are not performing like they would hope to be performing. And in order for there to be a place for them to level down, that's why we've had to have that particular course. There's another situation that occurs is that oftentimes when there are transfer students who come into our school from other districts, they may have already had the physical science course as 7th graders. And so it wouldn't make sense for them to take physical science as 8th graders. So they have that as another option. But that course is for the kids who don't fall into the regular situations. There are some other additional consequences of that pathway. Within that, it splits our 8th grade students into 3 different categories of students. So there is quite a range of things going on at the 8th grade level. For our 7th grade students, they're in 2 different courses for science. And one of the things that we definitely notice is that while 7th grade students who are in physical science have the opportunity to go into the Regents Living Environment, the students who are in 7th grade life science have not had that opportunity to go into Regents Living Environment, which has created an inequity because there are some students who get to go there and there are some students who don't. Because of that, we're looking at an adjustment in that pathway. And this would be a 2-year rollout. And this is a graphic that shows the first year of that rollout. Now, nothing in our proposal is doing anything about 6th grade. 6th grade is going to stay Earth and Space Science. But for the next school year in our proposal, what we would see is that all students would take the physical science course. Now, students next year who are in 8th grade would still be in those 3 different courses that are already existing because that's the track that they are currently on as 7th graders. So they, as 8th graders, would have those 3 different courses. But for next year, 7th graders, we propose that we would have all students in physical science. And then the subsequent year would be the final part of the rollout where our 6th grade students, all Earth Space Science, all of our 7th grade students in physical science. And then in 8th grade, all the students would be taking a life science course of some manner. It would either be the regular 8th grade life science course or the 8th grade Regents Living Environment course. So that is the change to the science pathway that we are proposing. Ms. Doyle, please feel free to jump in at any point. We're going to now actually talk about some things that are just some additional information about this that may be some questions that the Board of Education has had within this.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Just to give a headline before we jump into this slide, this really is about inclusion and providing opportunity for more students. And you'll see we have some data on how we compare to neighboring districts. And we really have the lowest percentage of access for kids at a Regents level course in 8th grade in science. you know, and I just heard the board talk about, you know, making sure that kids are included in field day and they don't feel excluded. And the current pathway, it does contribute to those things. And what we're proposing is a much more inclusive pathway that doesn't take anything away, and it in fact provides more opportunity and access for kids.
And so in this slide, in showing the graphic of the pathway that we are proposing, one of the things that can be accomplished within this, first of all, that additional 8th grade course can be eliminated because all of the 8th grade students would be in either Regents living environment or the 8th grade life science course. The 7th grade students would all be learning in heterogeneous groups, learning with their peers, just as they do in their ELA and their social studies classes. All the 8th graders are taking some level of life science, whether that's the living environment or the life science course. What that allows for is then, if there are students who get into the living environment course who maybe are not performing as well as they would hope, there would be a place to put them that is appropriate so that they would be able to just easily level down into that 8th grade life science course. A few additional things within that is that none of the proposal that we have here would have any impact on teacher staffing. All of the 7th and 8th grade science teachers are certified to teach the physical science and the life science. And of the 6 teachers, I think 4 of them already teach both of those courses. So there wouldn't be a big change in teacher assignments necessarily. It would be something that they are just teaching things that they are already teaching. In addition to that, the Amplify Science program, which we put in place last year, is a very rigorous science program. It was designed from the ground up to be aligned with the next generation science standards, which are the national standards, but also the New York State Science Learning Standards, which have been put in place by the state of New York that are modeled after the next generation science standards. The Amplify program is designed to meet the rigor of those standards. And so the courses that we are providing to students now definitely are going after that rigor. The other thing that this proposal would provide would be an opportunity that if in the future we would want to go toward a universal acceleration of all students into living environment, this structure would already be put in place so that that would be an easy transition. That is not necessarily a part of our proposal at this time, but it would be something that would be an easy transition if the direction of the district were to go to that place.
Just to go back to Amplify Science. So when we presented last time, we failed to share that would not be a change in curriculum. It is the same program that is being used in both classes. Really, the only difference is just the way kids are sorted and the title of honors, but the curriculum is the same.
So here I've provided a little bit of data on our percentages of students who take the Regents Living Environment course as 8th graders. So I'm looking at the 3 years that I've been associated with the district. 2018-19 was the first of those years. In that year, we had 20.2% of our 8th graders taking a living environment. In the following year, which was last school year, we had 22.4% taking Regents Living Environment. And then this year we have 78 students out of the 331 8th graders, and that's 23.6. For the students who are currently scheduled to take living environment next year, it would be 81 students out of the 352 students who are in 8th grade next year, and that's 23%. The students who will be in 8th grade, not next year, but the following year, would be the first group that would get to living environment following this new structure. So the students going into 8th grade next year are still under the old structure, but the following year, those students would be going into living environment from the new structure that we are proposing. So I spoke with my colleagues who coordinate the science departments at various school districts that are nearby, and found out what their percentages of students who take living environment or earth science. The state of New York allows middle schools to offer either living environment or earth science. And much of that is dependent upon the certifications that the science teachers have. So each district makes their own decision about what the Regents course is that they offer at the 8th grade level. You'll see there that William Floyd, which is right next to us, they actually do a universal acceleration program where every one of their 8th grade students is accelerated into living environment. Additionally, they do the same thing with Algebra 1, but they do have all 8th grade students accelerated into the Regents course. In Sayville, they have 40% of their 8th graders that are accelerated into living environment. Hauppauge has 40% accelerated into living environment. Bayport Blue Point, 40% of their 8th graders, they accelerate into earth science at Bayport Blue Point. Pat Med, they have 30% of their students who are accelerated into earth science. And Connecticut has 25% of their students accelerated into earth science. So of these neighboring and nearby districts, we see that all of the percentages in their districts are higher than what the percentage in our district is.
Then just to add some research to the benefits of inclusive environment where all kids have equal access, not only does it benefit students that are usually experiencing marginalization, that's a common misperception. It actually benefits all students. It provides greater social and emotional well-being, boosted self-efficacy, enhanced learning outcomes, and just better preparation for high school and career and college.
So one of the things with taking a Regents level course in middle school, and this is a regulation that the state has in place already that exists and has been in place for some time. But if a student takes a Regents course in middle school, they do have to pass both the course and the associated Regents test to receive credit for having done that course in middle school. And we've been fortunate that our students have passed both the course and the Regents exam. If there were students who choose to take the Regents living environment as 8th graders following our new proposed pathway, once they get there, if they are successful, that is always the goal. If they, for instance, did not pass one or the other of the course or the Regents exam, they would have to retake the course the following year as 9th graders. The thing with that is it doesn't put them, but those particular students behind, because they would be taking that as 9th graders and still have the opportunity to have the 4 levels of science courses at the high school level. But the benefit of this is that if they were in the 8th grade course and maybe didn't pass the Regents test, they take the course as 9th graders, and then they have that background and that solid learning that they have done to build upon as 9th graders so that they can be more successful as 9th graders when they take that Regents exams. So we feel that that will be an opportunity to even improve our Regents scores at the high school level. One of the things that you may have been wondering about is there potential for increased acceleration in mathematics? You know, a difference between the math and science is that the mathematics is really built in a very linear fashion where skills build upon one another. In science, you can have different sequences and that sort of thing. But the math skills, in order for us to do any kind of universal acceleration in Algebra 1, if that were a goal of the board to do that at some point, we would have to do some adjustments to the curriculum at the 6th grade and 7th grade levels so that students do the appropriate learning before taking the 8th grade Algebra 1 course. But for this science proposal, we would not have to do any curriculum adjustments. It simply would be an adjustment of the sequencing. In regards to prerequisites for the acceleration into the Regents course, in the Bellport Middle School course catalog, there is a statement that in order for students to go into those Regents level courses, they have to have an 85% in their 7th grade science course. And that's the same whether they're accelerating into the living environment course or the Algebra 1, they would have to, in the 7th grade course, they would have to have that 85%. And Ms. Doyle, that is the end of my part of the presentation. If you have any additional items to add, please feel free.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Just like to add that Mr. Burke has been here longer than me, and we had a conversation about, how the teachers feel about this and logistical things that happen when you make these types of changes. And he shared with me that, this sort of came up organically just because of that structure on the first slide and how it's really not seamless. There's that one-off course. It doesn't provide many students the opportunity to take the Regents in 8th grade. So it is something that is supported by the science department. And yes, Ms. Ancona.
If you were still going, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun.
Oh, no.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not, I understand. Thank you so much for all the hard work. And I see that you answered every single one of my questions. So I'm sorry if I have more questions, but I believe that we should be expecting more from all students. And I waited a long time for my son to be able to get into some type of honors because we don't offer gifted and talented or any accelerated classes in the elementary level. So this is kind of near and dear to my heart, having a kid that went down this trajectory. And I just don't want to I want to make sure that every student does have the opportunity to go this way. And I'm not saying it's a bad way. I'm just saying that I feel that this society, it's not just South Country, it's every school district that seems to be in the United States. We're focusing more on equity than excellence when we could really in reality have both. And I see where your vision is to bring that together in this way. However, I don't think adding 20% of our students to this, meaning that we're at 22 something now, that we might be at 40 in 2 years from now, is even enough of that to actually achieve what you're trying to achieve. If I were to approve this and want to do this, I would rather go the route William Floyd goes, where 100% of our students do this and go the universal route. And with you guys having a prerequisite of 85, that's going to block a lot of children out from doing this. So I think in my happy world, I would like to see that prerequisite go down to 75 because they can handle a Regents course at a 75. I mean, a lot of kids are C students and handle Regents courses, and get more kids into that Regents course, hopefully at 100. I mean, I can understand with, some disabilities and some kids won't be able to, but at least 90% of the students, or we could put 100% in and take them out if we could see that they really can't hack it. The other concern I have is what right now happens if a 9th grader takes this exact Regents and passes the course and fails the Regents? Are they allowed to retake that Regents? Because you had mentioned middle school had to take both again.
Right. The regulations are different for middle school than they are for 9th grade students. So any student at the high school level who is taking a Regents course, if they were to not pass that Regents exam, the practice has been that they would take the course during the summer to prepare for taking the Regents exam in summer school. That is the typical process that has been put in place. Now, this past August, they did not have an administration of the test. This coming August, they're not having an administration of the test. But in future years, assuming things are back to normal with the testing schedule from the state, then the students in 9th grade who didn't pass the Regents test would have that opportunity to take it in August following that June administration. The truth is that for any high school student, they can take that Regents test as many times as they need to achieve success, or to get the score that they may even be wanting. They may be wanting a higher score, so they can retake the test in that case as well.
Okay, and what does it take for us to make this plan from going from 40% to 100% participation?
It would be the same exact plan.
So is that something that you're willing to tweak and go for that? Because like I said, I don't want these kids to be shortchanged, and I want them to excel, and I want as many kids as I can get to take the Regents, but I don't like the fact that we're going to stop an honors program, especially when somebody's waited 7 years for it. And technically 8 when you go into the 8th grade Regents. But I just think that there's kids, we can push all kids, and we can expect more of all kids and see how they do on that end. It doesn't necessarily have to be an honors, but I think it should be at least the Regents.
So that's exactly how we set up the structure. If it's something that the board wanted to explore, the structure would be there in 2 years.
For 100% participation at the Regents level. And
Mr. Burke, could you
Yes.
go back to that slide? Mr. Burke, could you go back to that slide from 2023?
Sure.
Because you had 40%, right? I'm not incorrect.
No, but if you look at the slide, this would set up the structure where all kids could accelerate into living environment.
So you would lower the prerequisite of 85 to a 75 to get most of those kids in there then?
So are you talking about 100% acceleration, or are you talking about lowering the grade for?
Well, I'm talking about both, because when the questions that you had answered for me, I had said, what do you expect to have? How many, what was the percentage of children that you expect to have in 8th grade Regents class? And you had advised 40%, but you couldn't really put a number, but that was your guess, was 40%. But then I don't see how it would be 40%. You had also that William Floyd, and your goal eventually was to have it at 100% with the universal, but I don't
No,
see.
that wasn't our goal. We were just setting up the structure if it's something that the board wanted to explore in the future.
Okay, so are you saying that you would be willing to do that sooner than later in 22 to 23 school year?
I think that's the will of the board. That would be a larger conversation.
And Dr. Gianni, how do you feel about that?
No, I don't have any problem with that, but we need to do this first. We need to set the structure up so everybody is available to be able to take the Regents.
Okay, so
I mean, the shift to 100% is a simple shift once the structure is in place. And that is something that I would suggest we send back to the T&L, Teaching and Learning Committee, for a more in-depth discussion before we're bringing anything to the board.
okay, so I'd be willing to look at that if it's 100% participation.
Did-
That was all my question.
So this system is not saying it's not going to be 100%. It's just you haven't gotten to that next step yet.
Correct.
Okay. And then in terms of the prerequisites about having a certain grade on a prior class in order to enter into this program, would you be looking at revisiting that?
Yeah, absolutely. And if we did move to 100% acceleration, there obviously wouldn't be that requirement.
Okay.
And that prerequisite grade is something that that we definitely would have some flexibility around already, you know, and so that is what is posted in the course catalog. That's a number that we always want to shoot for. We certainly would have the flexibility if it was the will of the board to be able to take a look at that, to be more flexible about getting additional students into the Regents course. And as Ms. Doyle just said, you know, with the idea of doing the universal acceleration at the 8th grade level, then the prerequisite wouldn't even be something that existed any longer.
Well, yeah, I would really want that in writing, that it was lower than an 85. Like, I'm one of those people that I would rather not see it there than see it in writing and have to change it, because then people can hold you to it. So I don't want to see that 85 in any course catalog, is what I'm really saying. Like, I get there's wiggle room, but I don't want to see it.
So I believe that the course catalog at the middle school level is not something that's administered to the students. It is something that's used kind of in-house by the counseling department, but not you know, something that the students look at or that sort of thing. But
Oh no, I understand.
this,
I don't want the guidance counselors to go by that either. I want them
Sure.
to do for everybody in that class, unless they, you know, if they're failing miserably, obviously then pull them out and put them in life science, but give them a chance to try it.
so one of the things with the notion of the possibility of that universal acceleration as 8th graders, we would want to propose that we go ahead with this particular pathway that we are showing you here this evening, just so that would set that structure up so that next year's students in 7th grade would be taking physical science, so that then the following year that we could either do as we have planned here and are proposing, or do the universal acceleration in the 22-23 school year into living environment.
Any other questions?
I just want to be clear that if we approve this plan, which I think administration is going to ask us to do tonight,
Correct.
we're going to be in a position to say that for the following year, the board would like to see all 8th graders taking the Regents level living environment course
It would actually be in 2 years.
in 2 years, the year after this next one.
Yes.
That's correct.
Right. And to follow up on what Ms. Ancona said, is there something that can be added in this proposal to say that that's what the goal is?
Well, I
Absolutely.
think, as Ms. Doyle said, I think that's part of a larger conversation. You know, I don't want to, I think if we all share that goal, we would have the structure in place to be able to achieve that goal, but that goal is 2 years away.
Yeah. So this gives the foundation for next year, so that the following year you could go to the 100% Regents level,
Correct.
Absolutely.
if that's recommended at that time. Okay.
Can you unshare your screen, Mr.
Yes.
Thank you.
So if there are no further questions on the board, as President Hayes suggested, the administration is looking for action on this to move forward.
So you've made a recommendation to approve the proposed science pathway for Belcourt Middle School.
Correct.
Is there a motion to approve that pathway?
I just have a comment before we move forward. Since the one person who is a teacher on this board couldn't be here due to death in her family, can we push this off one cycle?
Well, I would just one couple of things. First, this does have scheduling implications for staff. So Ms. Arruda is on the Teaching and Learning Committee. I know you and President Hayes sat on that committee as well,
Yeah.
where that committee unanimously approved this pathway. So I understand the trustee's not here at this time, but at a previous meeting, she did support this. This bill.
Okay, all right, just wanted to give that accommodation. Thank you.
So is there a motion to approve this? Mr. Parker, Mr. Trent, second. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? All, 1, 2, 4, 6 in favor. So everyone who's here tonight voted in favor of that. It's approved.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, Ms. Ancona.
I just wanted, before we let Ms. Doyle go, I just had a question about the Regents for this year. Can we just keep her on while I ask that really quick? I was gonna
Sure.
do it in my closing remarks, but since she's here, maybe she knows. So high school students are saying that for the Regents this year, if they can get an exempt, but if they take the course and get a grade on it and do bad, that the exempt, they can't then exempt it, that colleges can still see that. Is that in fact true?
It depends. It's not an easy answer. So that can happen. I wish I had the language in front of me. I could be more explicit, but there is a provision in there where that can happen. And I believe Dr. Gianni shared with the board that we had to comment on, the state asked for comment on that specific item. And our comment was that we don't support kids that fail the Regents be included in our calculation. There is some flexibility on what school districts can do. So I'm sorry, can you just ask your question again? I just want to make sure I'm
So
answering.
I'll just give you a scenario. Let's
Yep.
say they can get an exemption for a Regents, but decides to take it to see what they get. They get a 40 on it. Now they can't get the exemption that 40 is being shown on their transcript.
That is not, I do not believe that is correct. I believe they can have the exemption.
Mr. Burke, do you know, I did see guidance. on it.
Yes.
I don't
I
remember.
know, I'm trying to pull it up right
My
now.
understanding, my understanding with the guidance on that particular scenario that you've presented is that a student would have the opportunity to take that exam, see how they do. If they wish to choose for the exemption after that, they can request that exemption. It is done kind of in-house where it's done through our district, and the counselors would go into any individual student's record and put the E for exemption in place of that number. It would be a similar situation if a student chose to take the test because they wanted to get the 85 and above designation. If they didn't make that 85, they can then request that exemption, and it's provided to them at that point.
That's exactly why I was pushing them to take it. But I just want to let the three of you know that there are high school teachers telling these high school students, multiple, not just my kid, that the scenario I presented is the case. So I had one of my son's friends the other day and I said, if I find out that's not true, will you promise to take the Regents? Because he's a good student, he can get the designation. So I wanted him to at least try. And he's like, if you find out that's not true, then I'll take it. So
yeah,
I really think that it needs to be said again to these students because they're choosing this exemption because for fear of failing it.
I just found the exact language. So it was in the frequently asked questions. If the 4 Regents exams are administered, will students still be entitled to an exemption from the diploma requirement related to passing these exams? That's a flat out yes. So even if they took it, they're still entitled to the exemption from the associated diploma requirement.
Okay, so can we just spread that word that?
Yeah, so that there is some other weird situations that I was alluding to, but if that's your question, that's exactly what it is. So I'll speak with Ms. Restivo and make sure that we're getting the word out.
Okay, especially math, because that's the big one that a lot of the kids are.
And so thank you for pointing that out, Ms. Ancona, because I will have that conversation directly with the math teachers at the high school because of
I
that.
appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, did the board vote?
Yes, we approve the pathways.
Okay.
We're now on to your item number 2
Thank-
here.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle and Mr.
Thank you.
Burke.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item for discussion this evening is consideration to modify a reopening plan. Interim guidance for in-person instruction, pre-K to 12 suggests schools may reduce physical distance when participating in aerobic activity to a minimum of 6 feet. Quite honestly, I missed this last time. We should have done this along with music. We did not, so I'm asking the board to look at it now. In addition, we may increase spectators for outdoor sports to no more than 500 spectators and indoor sports to no more than 250 spectators, subject to facility capacities and social distancing, of course. And that is a new state guideline. As a result, the administration is recommending a modification to our reopening plan to address and permit individuals participating in aerobic activities resulting in heavy breathing, and that's really physical education class, from 12 to 6 feet in all directions, and increase in spectators, as mentioned, subject to facility capacities, bringing our plan in line with CDC and DOH guidance. If the board's in favor of these changes, we will send them, as we did to the board's advisory committees, post them online and send them to the community, giving all stakeholders the opportunity to feedback before we implement. We will have 1 week input as we did last time. The period would begin tomorrow and through Friday, 28th, with changes taking effect Monday, June 1st. Mr. Pacini, question.
All right, if I just heard you correct, but I'm sorry, the regulation guidance for specifically for spectators at sports is from the state's concern that, and the county, that's as of now?
Yeah, actually, some schools are already allowing those spectator numbers come in.
So, but with the timeline you just suggested, our sports will be over by the time we meet again.
Yeah, well, the problem we really have is that input piece that is suggested by the interim guidance.
That's a suggestion.
Listen, I'll ask council to weigh in on it. I mean, I've asked him before, and I think he believes that any change to our plan does require the input. I wasn't sure if that input only required when we were bringing kids for in-person learning, but I don't know if there's any clarity on that at this point.
So what the guidance says is that plan changes require the input. So that is the language from the guidance that is as of April 9th, 2021. Of course, that guidance has remained the same while changes have been made to the maximum, the state's maximum social gathering limit. So as the guidance that addresses to schools has remained the same, and that guidance still requires the input of the stakeholders prior to making changes to the plan. However, the state's local social gathering limits have changed over time.
Is there any requirement as to the length of time that input is needed? We did a week last time, so that's why I'm suggesting that now. Can that be shortened?
So I believe that the district has a number of committees that I believe comprise the stakeholders that would be required to have input.
Yes.
There is no specific timeline for the input in the guidance. It just requires the input.
Okay, so are you suggesting that we could send it to our advisory committees tomorrow and institute it by Friday if we get that input?
Yes, that's my opinion. There's no specific requirement for the input, the length of time for the input. These changes have been made statewide, and it's my opinion that there's no specific timeline for that input.
Well, is input required from all committees, or could it just go to health and safety, for example?
It's
Uh,
stakeholders, the language is.
Well, there's stakeholders within the health and safety committee.
True, true.
It just seems silly to, I mean, at this point, because the next time we meet is June 9th.
Oh, no, no, it
The
would
next season
be,
ends June 5th, as far as athletes go and spectators.
I think what Dr. Gianni was saying is to do like we did last time, which was to give approval subject to
Sure.
the survey from the stakeholders, and unless they came back and were, had considerable comments against doing it, it wouldn't go through.
and
So I'm sorry. So the decisions with respect to moving from the 6-foot limitations down to the 3-foot limitations are very specific. The stakeholders with respect to changes in updating plans is more general.
okay.
They don't name the specific stakeholders. In the guidance, when you speak about moving from 6 feet to 3 feet, the identity of the stakeholders is very specific. More general changes or updating the plans, it has a general statement that the responsible parties must work with stakeholders to make decisions regarding the updating of plans.
So, listen, I'm comfortable sending it to our advisory committees tomorrow and implementing it by Friday. If the board is comfortable with that. And I think our stakeholders, we should just send it to all 4 advisory committees. Because they're made up of everyone. And then you have a broader group. I see Ms. Ancona has her hand up.
I just have a question. Are we going from 12 to 6 or from 6 to 3?
No, 12 to 6.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I heard John say 3.
Yeah, no, because he was talking about the guidance for moving to 3.
Okay. I don't even know when the next health and safety meeting is. Is it
No,
before?
I would do it via email like I did last time. I would send it. I would send it to them.
Okay.
So you'll just take responses from the individual members of the various committees, and unless there's opposition,
Right.
it'll be implemented. You're saying Friday, but maybe Monday.
Friday, no, yeah,
So you could do it Friday?
yeah, I think we could do it Friday. If I get it out tomorrow and ask for input by tomorrow evening, we can probably get it done Friday, or at least for the weekend. Is the board comfortable with that?
Well, I am.
Okay, I do need action to,
Okay,
it's
let's,
in fact going to change the plan, so we would need action on that.
All right, so is there a motion to approve the recommended action, which is to modify the reopening plan concerning aerobic activity? Mr. Pacini, second by Ms. Felice. Questions or discussion? All in favor? I see all 6 hands raised, so it's approved.
Okay, thank you so much. Our next item for discussion is this evening is the Board of Education meeting schedule for next school year. When developing the draft schedule, we followed a similar meeting schedule for next school year as we did for this school year, absent any additional special meetings that we had added. With things approaching normalcy, I do not anticipate the need to schedule as many special meetings. However, that is, of course, up to the board to do as we do move along the school year. I offer this meeting calendar for the board's discussion and consideration for action so we can begin to publicize it.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the recommended action, the approval of the meeting schedule That would be the 2021 to,
21, 22.
right. It'll be the 2021 to 2022 school year. And that meeting schedule, is there a motion to approve that calendar? Mr. Pacini made the motion, Ms. Felice second. Any questions or discussion? I'll make just one comment, and that is that when we get around to doing the minutes, could we get the dates corrected here on the motion to make sure it's the proper school year, because the one in writing is
Okay, absolutely.
the last one. So as long as that gets fixed. All in favor of approving this calendar? It's unanimously approved.
Okay, our next item for discussion is the first reading of Board Policy 7530, Child Abuse and Maltreatment. This is a policy revision. The policy has been revised by our policy provider to reflect the bill signed by the governor related to child abuse. Strategic Planning, as well as District Council, have both reviewed and approved this revision, and I offer it to the board for its first reading.
Do you need a motion to approve it for
No,
first?
no,
reading, or
any
we're
discussion,
just-
if you want to
okay.
have questions, discussions.
Questions or discussion, anybody? I don't see any, Dr. Gianni.
Okay, then I'll move on to the next item, which is first reading of Policy 8140, Equity, Inclusivity, and Diversity in Education. This is a new policy that was developed by our Equity and Education Committee and then reviewed and approved by Strategic Planning and District Council. I offer this policy as well for the board's review and first reading.
Any questions or discussion? So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on to item 6. Our next item for discussion and action is the proposed budget and slate of officers for the Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association. Those information is indicated in your digital packet, and I offer it for the board's discussion and action.
and
You have a couple of
there is
resolutions.
the recommended action. Shall we read? We need to read that out loud, or since it's there, it's a
Do you want me to?
proceed. No, I'm just asking procedurally, does it need to be read out loud, or the fact that it's there in a narrative, if we're willing to vote on it? Is that okay, Mr. Sheehan?
So you don't have to read out loud. It's an attachment to the agenda.
Okay,
You don't have to read verbatim. It's incorporated into the resolution.
okay. So, the resolution then would be to approve the, budget vote and slate of officers and members of the executive committee for the Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association. Is there a motion to do that? Mr. Trent, Ms. Ancona, second. Questions or discussion? Mr. Pacini?
Just I guess just a little information. I am on the slate of officers here. I will be voting in favor unless Mr. Sheehan tells me I should abstain, but I would like to vote on the other officers and the budget. So is there any reason I would need to abstain if I'm on this slate?
So this is a separate nonprofit organization that is providing this slate to this association. So there is no conflict with you voting for this slate that when you were on it.
Thank you. I didn't think so. Just want to make sure.
All right, all in favor of approval? We've got all hands raised. It's unanimously approved.
And President Hayes, you had mentioned earlier you wanted to add item 6 to discuss the board statement.
Yeah, the
Item
last
7,
item
rather.
7.
Sorry.
Yeah, we've got numbers all over the place tonight. Yes, I wanted to discuss with the board the statement that I had drafted for the a statement for the board to make, and I had emailed it to everybody. I've heard individually from some of you, but not from others. And if we're doing something as a board, it has to be done in public, and we have to take a vote on it. So do you need me to read this statement to you? Or do you remember the one I sent by email? I'm not getting any help. Do you want me to read? Do you want
No
me to
need
read?
to read it.
No need to read it for me.
That's by email.
No need to read it?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Ms. Felice made the motion to approve. Mr. Parker seconded.
I'm just on the question, is this in an attachment or something that
No.
we know what's
it's
being
not.
voted on?
It was done by email to everybody. So
Sounds like you got to read it.
I think I'm gonna read it, okay? Do it. Hate has no place in our schools, and when it exists there or in our community, it harms the hearts and minds of our students. The recent display of racial bigotry directed specifically toward a current member of our school board demonstrates how much we as a community need to work together for the best interest of our students and everyone else in our school district. As members of the Board of Education, we reaffirm our pledge to be an instrument of lasting change against systemic racism, intolerance, and social injustice. We also reaffirm our priorities set at our organization meeting last July, especially this one. Continue to provide a safe and secure learning environment that is accepting and welcoming to everyone and ensures all children have access to a well-rounded, culturally responsive education that supports their social, emotional development during the school day and during co-curricular activities. End of quote. We call upon everyone in our school district to join us in this effort and to extend a safe, secure, accepting, and welcoming environment throughout our entire community. And so that the motion would be to make that statement. I think it was made and seconded, and having read it, all in favor? Okay, it's unanimously approved, but I have one housekeeping thing, which is if we're making the statement, do you want me to list individual names of everybody? Some of you had already said you did want your names mentioned or listed, and I'll do it. I think it would be a good statement if we all did it. That would be my recommendation, but it's up to you to make the decision. Mr. Puccini.
I have no problem with my name being listed, but I will say that I firmly believe that every communication from the Board of Education should be signed Board of Education, and that should be enough. Our names are on the letterhead. But if the board decides to list them individually, I'm okay with it. But I think we should stand it and represent ourselves as a board and not individuals. Thank you.
That's a good point. I hadn't looked at it that way. How about Mr. Parker?
I would agree with Mr. Puccini's statement, yeah.
Okay.
Everyone knows who we are.
All right. So we'll do this as a board, and I'll sign it on behalf of the board. And it'll be a letterhead that indicates the board. And it does have all names on it. Okay. So next.
I'm up. I'm back.
You are back.
Okay. Moving on to curriculum agenda item. Administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in Schedule G1 and G2.
I'm sorry. This is now,
Curriculum,
I know, just a second. Board consent on curriculum, and you have G1 and G2 that you're recommending.
yes.
Okay, is there a motion to approve items G1 and G2? Ms. Ancona, a second by Mr. Trent. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimously approved.
And moving on to personnel items, administration recommends approval of personnel changes reflected in schedules H1 through H4.
H1 through H. Is there a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, Madam
yes.
Chair, could you just separate out H1 and then take H2 through 4 together?
H2 through H4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to approve item H1? A motion to approve item H1. Mr. Pacini, is there a second? Is there a second? I will second it. Are there questions or discussion?
I have a comment. I'm sorry, but I think Cheryl. was
Well,
first.
that goes into having discussion after a motion has been made.
I
and
think Cheryl
seconded.
beat me to it though, so why don't you give her the floor?
Thank you. This particular motion has to do with accessing staff. And while I supported the budget going forward, there were many concerns I had about the budget. The biggest one I had was the fact that we were privatizing our child care early development center. And I went back and looked at my calendar from the last meeting I spent and the last act I made on the board in 2019 when I left the board for the 1 year. And my last act as president was to sign the certificate of occupancy for the childhood center. So it was very personal to me, the creation of the center. And now that I'm still not sure what direction we are going in with the direction other than with the center, other than some of the people who are included in administering that building, are included on this list. And I'm just not convinced with the additional money that we got, with reports that still have to come out with funding, that this excess list, to the extent that we have it, to the degree that we don't know what our enrollment has declined to, if at all, is necessary. So for that, I have to speak against the motion.
Okay. Are there any other comments or discussion, Mr. Pacini?
Yeah, in looking over the resignations, I see that Nurse Carol is retiring. And I don't know that I've ever met a more sweet, warm personality in our district than Nurse Carol. So I really wanted to call that out. She's a wonderful woman, and she was the school nurse when my oldest was a Critz. So good luck, Nurse Carol.
Okay. And I'm just going to add something about, it's not clear yet because a decision has not been made yet as to the exact shape or construction of the UPK classes that will be at South Haven starting in the fall. Is that correct, Dr. Gianni?
That's correct. And we do have a legal obligation to move forward with this excess list. Otherwise, and I don't know what kind of position it would place the district in if we were not to, and maybe council can weigh in on that, because those positions are not planned for in the current school budget or the proposed school budget.
But they could be added back in depending upon a review of circumstances.
And funding.
And funding. Any other questions or discussions about item H1?
Well, it's H, so on H1 is more than the excess. I don't know if Trustee Felice had indicated to lump in all of H1 into the separate motion, because we do have some resignations on there, as well as some returns for leave of absence.
That is true.
To
But-
to Dr. Gianni's point, then we'd have to break it out further to break out H1-1 through H1-29. Those are the ones I would
All
want.
right, so do you want to withdraw your motion
No, I didn't make the
oh,
motion.
you didn't make the motion. Mr. Puccini, I think you made the motion.
Yeah, I just spoke again. That's all. But I understand that
I
there's.
know, but procedurally, that is a good point,
Mhm.
and we need to get a clear
So,
vote
so,
here,
so,
so.
so procedurally, trustee Felice would make a motion to amend the motion that's on the floor.
I can do that.
To further break down the specific areas addressing the accessing issue. And then that would be voted on, and then once it's amended, it would be on the floor as amended.
Okay, so, Ms. Felice, you have a motion to amend the
Let me
motion.
go forward with the two portions of H1 that I will vote in favor of. And that would be, I'd make a motion to approve H1.1 through H1.9, and also H1.3 and H1.31. Why don't we start with that?
Okay, so you're amending the motion to approve items H1.1 through H1.9 and H1.30 and 1.31.
Correct.
All right, so that's a motion to amend. Is there a second to support that amendment? Ms. Ancona, all in favor of the amended motion, raise your hand.
There's going to be discussion first, because I'm a little.
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, because procedurally, I don't really understand what's happening here, but if the intention here is for H1.10 to H1.29 is to be voted down, if that's the outcome, I'm not comfortable with supporting this motion to amend it until I understand where the money's coming from if these teachers are not accessed. I mean, there's a lot of implications here that I don't completely.
So this, I just want
I
to.
know, but I'm trying to follow what council had said about how we deal with this.
Right,
because
so I
we
just want to be,
And I just want to make sure I understand how to vote, because again, I don't want to be seen as being in favor of voting down that motion as much as it pains me to see teachers be accessed. I don't know what the plan is if this isn't voted in favor of. So I'm in a quandary here.
if I may.
Sure.
Mhm.
So right now, there was the whole H1 was on the table.
Mhm.
And then there was a motion to amend that motion to only prove a portion of H1. That motion to amend is a separate motion, right? So you have to amend the motion. Once the motion to amend is passed, then you will take that separate amended motion and vote it up and down. Okay, so it's a two-step process. One, you amend the motion on the floor, that motion is amended, and then you vote on that motion as amended up or down. The remainder of H1 is not affected. That can be moved separately and voted separately up or down. Is that clear?
I get that. If you want to call the vote, I'm fine with it. I know how I'll be voting. Thank you.
All right, so we had the motion to amend the motion. It was seconded. All in favor of amending the motion, raise your hand. I've got 5 hands raised. Opposed to the amendment, 1 hand, that's Mr. Pacini. So the motion passes. So now we've amended the original motion. We're going to do this separately. Is there a motion to approve item H 1.1 through H 1.9? Ms. Ancona. Ms. Felice, second. Questions or discussions about this motion? Okay. All in favor of approving H 1.1 through H 1.9, raise your hand. It's unanimously approved. Then we have, is there a motion to approve items H, I'm going to do it out of order, but items H 1.30 and H 1.31? A motion, that's Ms. Ancona, Mr. Trent, second. Questions or discussions about that one? Seeing none, all in favor to approve item H 1.30 and H 1.31. That's unanimously approved. Now, is there a motion to approve item H 1.10 through H 1.29? Is there a motion to approve that? Mr. Pacini, is there a second? I will second the motion. Discussions? Ms. Ancona.
So I just want to say that because we've spent weeks developing a budget, I'm going to pass this motion, but however, I really would like administration, and once again, to try to come up with this money so at least these people can come back. It saddens me and I'm disgusted by it. But because we made a balanced, thoughtful, respectful budget, and unfortunately this was the outcome, I'm going to approve it. However, we do have positions and we can make higher cuts, and administration is going to work on that. So we're hoping that we have every single one back on this list, and I'm really sorry.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? All in favor of approving? I did the motion. I did the second. We'll take the vote. If you're voting in favor of approving these items, raise your hand. I see 5 hands raised. In opposition, is there a no vote? Ms. Felice voted no. So the motion is carried. All right, we're down, Dr. Gianni, I think you're down to your next subject.
No, we got to finish that personnel, and which is items H2 through items H4.
Okay, is there a motion to approve items H2 through H4? Ms. Felice, and a second by Mr. Trent. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? This one is unanimously approved.
And administration recommends approval of business items reflected in schedules I1 through I28.
Is there a motion to approve business items I1 through I28? Is there a motion to approve, Ms. Felice? Is there a second, Mr. Trent? Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, All in favor of approving business items I-1 through I-28, please raise your hand. Let's see, all 6 hands are raised. It's approved.
That's all the items that I have, President, please.
You know, I have a question here. We did I-1 through I-28. And maybe I made a copy of this agenda without doing a final refresh. But did that include the discard requests from the Bellport High School Library?
Yes, we pulled an agreement off that wasn't
Oh,
signed.
that's right. That's right. So so the numbering is correct.
Yes.
All right. So then we have, is there any public commentary on non-agenda items, Ms. Flynn? No,
No.
I don't think so.
No.
Now for closing remarks. I'll start with Mr. Frankie.
I have none tonight, but I'm very excited that we're starting to get back to our normal, that we're starting to, the seniors are allowed to have these events this year, and that we're really just trying to do everything that we can for our seniors, because I would say our class definitely deserves to go out the way that you guys are allowing us to end our high school career. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frankie. Thanks to all the students for all the work they've done and the way you've rolled with all these problems and dealt with it. So thank you for that. Okay, final comments, Mr. Parker?
None tonight. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Pacini?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Felice?
Yeah, I just with the actions of this week, I just put a few thoughts together, and I just asked the board and the public to bear with me. But with respect to a lot of things that are said, and I feel like we're going in a new direction from this meeting, and I hope that is what I'm truly feeling. But I just wanted to say that with respect to my principles as a former labor leader, as a former government career person, and in my role now in public education, you know, they really are quite similar, but there is a difference. And there's a difference in those principles in how we prioritize them. For me, I'm now a trustee of the district, the governing board of the district, and the teachers are representatives of their members with respect to employment issues. And that's their job. The union's district union leadership, at the end of the day, all of them are teachers. And teachers, because of this pandemic, were valued in ways that we never imagined, but were most certainly deserving. These are professionals who have devoted their lives to education. While the union has a job to do, it does not has a job to do, so does the board. And I respect the board for the vote that they just took. As I see it, to get that job done, we must work together, speak and listen to each other, agree, and yes, sometimes disagree. To work with the teachers union and all district unions, and even when being endorsed by them, does not mean being controlled by them. To speak negatively of any employee of the district, regardless of which role they are acting in, as was disclosed tonight, to vote against the budget, where the public voted against the public only hurts our students. It's not serving as a good example conducive to bettering our educational experience here in South Country. In my role on the board and in life, I value my independence while listening to the voices of all stakeholders in the community, including students, parents, caregivers, and taxpayers. It's only right and necessary that those voices include those of the professionals who are on the front lines working with our students every single day. Thank you. And thank you for the work that you do.
In summation, we've been through many difficult times, particularly in the last year. And I take hope when I see that we're able to come together and discuss our differences, and keep an eye on really what is the most important thing here, because it all comes down to what's in the best interest of our students. And in order to make that determination, we also have to take into account what is best interest of our faculty and our staff and our administration and our parents and our community. And to have to take into account all the different issues that affect everybody, and each person gets affected differently sometimes. It creates a situation where decision-making it's something that weighs heavily on me, and I think it weighs very heavily, I think, on everybody else on this board. I can see it in their faces. I can hear it in their voices. But the bottom line is, these aren't hidden agendas. It's caring very much about the best interest of the students, but taking into account all the other factors that go into providing the best education possible for them. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to make more progress in the coming year, as we move forward. And also that we are able to make it very obvious to the public about all the good things that are going on in our schools. Because a lot of times it's the squeaky wheels that seem to suck all the air out of the room, but there's so much good that's going on in our programs and with our teachers and with plans for the future. And it really is quite exciting. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Mr. Frankie, but are you feeling a sense of hope for the future in the students at the high school?
For sure, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for letting me do that, but I knew the answer because I knew what you had said before about how you and your classmates were looking forward to so many things and how appreciative you've been of what's been provided under very difficult circumstances. So thanks to everybody, and we'll see you next. Oh, Miss Ancona.
Sorry, I didn't get to do my closing remarks. That's okay. So I just wanted to thank Christine for her work yesterday. I know it's tireless, but I'm sure she'd rather do that than what she did last year. Because this was definitely better from even from a spectator view. And I also wanted to say that my thoughts and prayers are with the Ruda family, and we're sorry for their loss and we're thinking of them. That's all. Thank you.
As are we all. So, okay, a motion to adjourn. Mr. Trent, and second by Miss Ancona. All in favor? It's unanimous.